Hi guys, it's Blackie and welcome back to the Mastering the Canteen Cup Cooking series as part of the Ground Pounder series. Boy, that's a mouthful, ain't it? Okay, in the past we've done a couple of quick dishes. Today I want to bring in the understanding of heat regulation. Now this is going to be a big crucial factor whenever you're cooking with a canteen cup. So let's understand here. Up to this point we've been doing where it's boiling water, okay? Now, water, when I fill this up, let's say right there, and I put it on whatever heat source. To this point I've been using that's old Pathfinder Trangia, but the heat is going to be applied to the bottom or the fire or whatever, or the side, you understand? And that heat is going to be transferred through this thin metal into whatever's inside of it. Now water is one of the best insulators there is, and so it takes 6, 8, 10 minutes, whatever, depending on the conditions, for that water to become heated to the boiling point. The temperature of that water cannot be any more, realistically, than 212, 211 degrees before it turns to steam and bubbles out. The hotter it gets, the faster it's going to do that, and we see that dynamic of it expanding and bubbling around inside the pot, right? And that's fine for liquid things like you saw me make that soup, where the end result is still mostly water, okay? But that does not work whenever we change this from a liquid into something else. Like whenever I add mashed potatoes to it, and it's going to turn from being a liquid to pretty much a creamy solid. It burns much easier because the amount of heat I'd have radiating on the bottom of this to make that water boil. And I dumped this in and I stirred up, and in just like a minute or less, I burned the bottom of it. I burned them taters. It's because this being thicker transfers heat a whole lot better, see? And so I have to regulate the heat, because with water in it perfectly fine 30 seconds ago, and then I dump something like this in, it starts sticking up and I burn it. I have to take it off the heat. I have to understand how to regulate heat, and that's what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to cook something in just a second. All right. What I want to give you is a visual for this. Is blowing up a balloon. Okay? When I set it upon the heat, that balloon starts blowing up. Once that balloon gets to a certain amount of pressure, a certain amount of air, a certain amount of heat, when I take it off, it will deflate at about the same rate. Okay? Then I can put it back on, it'll inflate again. I'm wanting to keep the temperature within this band right here, so I don't burn my food. If I leave it on the fire, it'll go above that and it'll burn it. If I take it off fire, that temperature starts dropping back down. See? So where it gets to where the threshold I want is, and it will stay in that threshold for just a minute, and it's going to drop out of that threshold. We're going to use the canteen cup to represent the sweet spot where I want that heat to be. So I put it on the fire and I start bringing that heat up, and the heat gets up to where I want. Let's say boiling water right here. I know that the temperature inside that cup is 200 something degrees. The flame coming off may be 1800. See? So I'm now going to dump my potatoes and take it off the heat, and I'm going to stir it up because that heat is still in that water and it starts dropping. The more I thicken it, the slower the heat leaves. Potatoes are very good at holding heat. Cheese is very good at holding heat. You ever picked up a piece of pizza and think, oh, it's okay, and take a bite and it's molten lava? The cheese held the heat a lot better. The surface cooled off, but the inside was still nice and gooey. Burn your tongue. See? Grab one of them cookies that Mama said they ain't cool enough yet, and bite down, and that hot chocolate chip burn the snot out of your mouth. That's the idea. There's a thermal regulation going on here. See? So I put it on the heat, I bring it up to temp, I put the stuff into it, I stir it off, and I have taken it off the heat and stir it up. Now, is it done then, or does it need to cook more? Potatoes would be done then, but what if I'm making chili? And we will be making some of this chili. This is something you can find at Walmart right now. It's called Darn Good Chili. It's a vegetable stuff that's meant to represent chili, and it's actually quite good. So we will be making some of this. It's one of my favorite instant chilies we'll be talking about later. But the thing is, it becomes thick in this cup, and that's easy to burn, ain't it? So now I gotta let it simmer for a while. Not just put it in that boiling water, because it's got to puff up, and the beans in here are going to take a couple of more minutes to take that heat in, absorb it, expand, become fully hydrated, not be kind of chunky, you know, crunchy. So I've got to give it time. So the way to do it, and we're going to demonstrate this here in a couple of minutes, whenever we're going to make one of my favorite dishes for a quick eat on the trail, camp taters. Okay, I wanted to give you the understanding of what we're about to do and why, because while it's running, I got to focus on my heat. Okay, I have brought the water up to a boil. I then dump my stuff in it, and I go to stirring. My measured amount that I have practiced at home, figure out that this much to this canteen cup equals about right. Just like I know that about that much, you can buy these, but you can figure out how much is in here of instant potatoes. Works for about a half, just a little over half of a canteen cup will make the potatoes. You put that much water in, and you dump this into it. We're going to talk about that in a minute, which would be, and I'll read them numbers off to you when it comes time. But I put it in there, I start stirring. It's going to take it a second to expand because it's powdery right now. So I'll keep it on that heat for just a moment, and I'll stir it. Once the water's kind of disappeared, and it's mostly more of a potatoes, I want to take it off that heat, and I want to stir it. And I want to let it kind of give it a couple of minutes to completely come together. Now, if I'm out in the winter and it's really cold out here, I'll bring it back on the heat. Remember that air coming up? So I figure that the heat's dropping. Okay, at about 2 minutes, put it back on the heat for like 30 seconds. That heat level will come back up, pull it back off, keep stirring it. So I don't let that bottom burn, but I put more air back in that tire, so to speak. I put more thermal heat back into my cup. And I'm regulating it. I'm keeping it from going too low or too high by taking it on and off the fire and stirring. See, that's the thermal regulation. Now, it's going to require you to do a little bit of practice. And that's the beauty of this, because you can do this at home on the eye of the stove or a hot plate if you're in an apartment that doesn't have a true kitchen. And therefore, you figured out that if you leave it sitting there, it's going to burn it. But if you keep stirring it and you take it off, do it around and keep it for like 30-40 seconds, put it back on the heat for 20 seconds, 10-15 seconds, pull it off and keep stirring it, you'll keep the bottom from burning because you keep putting that heat back in, but at the same time, you're not overdoing it. Okay, today we're going to be not using the Trangia. Today we're going to be using the stove with wood. I'm going to build a small fire in here, a twig fire, to show you how to regulate that. I want to build up a bed of coals in here from twigs, and then I will bring my cup in, set it down and get it going. I will feed more twigs into it. Now, you see how big the firebox is, and yes, I know you're supposed to set it like that on top of a fire and then put the cup on top. You can absolutely do that. However, I want to be able to regulate the heat a little bit better, and having to stick holes in that little bitty window, I'm going to turn it upside down like this so it's wide open, more like the old U.S. Army canteen stove that I've used for 45 years or more. Cool front's coming in, ain't it awesome? And I'm going to do it and sit up there and going. And notice the way I set it. I'm going to set it like that and smother it. I'm going to put it on the side like this. Noticing the solid side is going to keep quite as much heat from coming out right here to heat up. Now if I put it too far in, I'm going to get fire coming out right there, and that's going to heat up these handles. But if I put it like I used to do with my old Army canteen, sitting here like that, these handles will stay cool for me to grab barehanded. If you notice in the last couple of videos I've used that Trangia, them handles heated up because the handles are so close to the bottom and so much heat is coming out that stainless steel transfers heat well. And so therefore I had to grab something to insulate my hand to pick it up. This way I should be able to grab it without having to worry about that. Okay? So let me get a stick fire going in here right quick and we'll come back and we'll start cooking. Okay, little quick tip. Whenever you're going to be using a twig fire, go ahead and process a big supply of your twigs. See all these funny knobs and everything? They make them stick out in every direction. They always get in each other's way. You try to move stuff around. Yeah. Grab it and snap it off about like that. And you want to be able to cup it in your hand. So like those, I'd snap off one. Snap off them little bitty twigs right there. Grab it, snap it. I want to keep it so it's about hand size and straight so that I can drop those in there and have like a given amount of fuel to put in, rather than this wildly uneven stuff where it's keeping the fire going a funny way or it's whatever. It's just I have found it's better to snap them all into like handfuls of straight pieces so I can pick up 2 or 3 of them and shove them in easily, especially when you only got a little bitty window like that. You want to put one in and you got all kinds of stuff sticking out, just hangs up and messes up everything. And worse, it could turn over your canteen cup, and that's a sad day when your meal hits the deck because you were having to fuss with putting something in a fire. So always make sure that you process your wood first. Okay, I've got my fire just started. And the 2 components you're going to need to do this is a package of Spam. You can cut from a bigger block if you want to. I'm using one of the single lunch types. And a measured amount of instant mashed potatoes. You've already figured out how big and how many of them you need because you practiced at home. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my canteen cup. Now I'm going to add just enough water to it to cover the bottom. That's all. That's it. I mean thin on the bottom because I don't want to initially burn. I want to brown a little bit this Spam. I don't want to initially burn it. Now I'm going to set it up there. And it's not directly on the fire. See, the fire's on the far side. With it like this, I can now take a few extra sticks and drop it down in there, and that heat's going to come up on the front wall. I'm heating that can up. Now I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to take my Spam. I'm going to tear off the end. What you're going to do is you're going to take the bottom, you're going to push it up so about like a 1/2 inch sticks out. And you're going to take your knife and you're going to cut about every 1/4 inch of slot straight down through that meat. Then you're going to scoot it out just a hair more, and you're going to slice that off into the pot like that, and repeat. Slice down, scoot it out, slice off, and that makes pre-cut cubes in there. Takes a little bit of practice to make sure you don't cut the package. But you'll get it. Again, practice at home. But this way I can cube it up without taking a lot of time. And when you get down here toward the end, it's going to be hard to hold on to. So be ready. And make sure you drop it in the cup and not drop it on you. When it gets down here this end, see, it wants to pop out now. Now I'm going to take it out and do that. Short little cuts like that. And I'm just going to take the knife and slice those off into the cup. And then finally, cutting it off into the cup. Like that. Now, taking my little stirring device, I'm going to make sure I'm on the heat. And I'm going to stir it up a little bit. Now what I'm doing is twofold here. One, putting a little bit more on the heat. I'm now heating that bottom up, and that's going to make that water evaporate fairly quickly. when I put water, I don't want it to scorch and burn immediately. So it would burn in just seconds if I sat it up there like that. I'm going to pick it up, and you can hear it sizzle. Okay? And what we're doing is I'm actually going to brown that Spam just a little bit, and that'll add more flavor to the final dish, it coming out that way. That water will evaporate, leaving just the grease that comes out of the Spam. This is also how we do bacon in a canteen cup, which I will do in a future recipe. Just set it up there, let the heat ever so often. Take a few more little bitty sticks, throw them in the fire. It ain't got to be a big fire for this. And when I get ready to boil water, I want to build that fire up. But see, that flame's licking way up to the top now. See, my handles are still cool. I'm looking down in there and I'm watching it sizzle and dance. Move it around on that bottom. Get that grease to come out of the ham. I'm trying to add flavor to the mashed potatoes. It actually adds a lot to it. And that water is now boiling off now. You hear it popping a little bit. It's thoroughly heating that Spam up, and at the same time, it's now starting to bring out a little bit of the flavor, more so than just plain Spam. Now, at this point, could you add spices? Absolutely. Now would be a good time to add some sort of dry spice like peppers or whatever that to the Spam. Maybe a little bit of pineapple in there. You know, whatever you're making. As that water boils off, you see the steam coming out. So we know that Spam's in 200-degree+ water right now. As that steam disappears, you know you're on the bottom. That's when the browning, true browning, is going to happen. Just keep an eye on it. This is a dish you need to watch. It's quick and it's easy, but you do need to be watching it. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and open up my mashed potatoes. And you see how little that is in there. I'm going to get my canteen ready to pour the water in there. A little over a half a canteen cup of water on this Pathfinder. Alright, stir it around a little. Alright. Cooking the Spam. See how the little stove is working well? Still got plenty of sticks to go. I got a nice small bed of coals. And it's real easy, like, yep. You see how easy that had been at me to tip it over? I went to shove a stick in and it was too long and I hit the far wall. That's what you got to be aware of. Alright. Take it off the heat a second, stir it. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the process and get rid of any of that excess water. Now I'm going to sit it on there and I'm going to really brown that bottom. Because that heat, see, it's like I'm inflating. Hear that heat going up? Pick it up. Stir it around a little. Put it back on the heat. Immediately goes back to sizzling. When you get well practiced, you can actually brown it all up. And it will actually look like you put it on a grill or something. I'm not going to go that far today because I'm wanting to do this quick for you. But it just takes a little bit of practice. See, I'm letting it sit there. I'm letting it sizzle. Getting a little bit of color. There's more sticks in there. Alright. Now, got a good smell to it. I know you won't be able to see that on the camera, but it's actually getting a little bit of crust on it. So that's about almost where I want. Put it up there one last time. And now I'm going to take a good handful of sticks. Let that sizzle up real good. And I'm going to load up my fuel because I'm about to boil, so I'm going to need a lot more heat than I got right now. Here it's sizzling. What I want, just where it wants to start to stick to the bottom. There we go. Now, we're going to add our water. 1/2 canteen cup full of water to it. We're going to put that back on. We're going to let that come to a boil. Then we're going to add the instant potatoes. Okay, I now have a rolling boil. Everything's good to go. Now I'm going to put in my instant mashed potatoes, and I'm going to take it off the heat. I'm going to stir it as this rehydrates. It's going to make it thick, easy to burn. After about 20 seconds, I'll bring it back to the heat for just a few seconds to warm it back up and keep stirring, and I'll kind of in and out. Okay. Nice rolling boil right now, so I add my instant potatoes. Now I take it off the heat and I go ahead and roll it, because when I put that hunk of mashed potatoes in there, it may form a ball, so you got to stir it up. So now I stir it, I take it back to the heat for just a few seconds. Instant bubbling, that means I'm still right there at that temperature, see? I take it off, I do a few more strokes. Put it back on. It'll go to bubbling. Woo! You gotta be careful, or you're gonna get hot taters all over you. Alright, that is now done and ready to go. That can now go out. All it took was that, and I've got a meal that is both potatoes and meat in one. Now, I'm sure you won't be able to see it, but remember I said I let it stick a little bit at the bottom? Now the bottom is clean of my canteen cup. I think you can see a little corner right there, because of that boiling action actually cleaned the cup while I was finishing bringing it up to a boil. So now when I get done eating out of this, it will be a relatively clean cup, easy for me to put a little bit of water in, a little scrubby, clean it up, set it back on the fire for just a second to heat it up and make sure it's good and sterile and clean, and then I can put it up. But that is all there is to making camp taters, but it's the regulation. Now notice how the fire's now died down to coals. I could keep going, or I could add other things. If I set it up there and let it sit just a second, sorry for the aircraft guys, there's still a lot of thermal heat in there. See how it instantly bubble, pop, pop. Now you could do other things like this, chilies, rice, stuff like that, SpaghettiOs, whatever you want to do. But where most people make the mistake is they burn it because they don't realize that thermal exchange that's going on, and that it's supposed to be a dance on and off the fire, stirring it to keep that rough level of heat in the cup without burning the food. So to recap, thermoregulation, firecraft, is understanding how to regulate your heat source, whether it's with a Trangia, an MSR stove, the stove at home, or a campfire. Campfire is the most labor intensive because of what kind of wood, how fast it's coming up, and that comes with experience, dirt time. You're going to burn some meals because you didn't pay attention. So always have a backup plan, have that Cliff Bar back there just in case. But if you don't want to burn meals, you got to stay really focused on your heat. That's the secret. Going from a water to a thick like this. What's okay for the water is not okay for something thick like this. It must be kept on and off to keep the heat regulated. How about something that I'm going to put in there that's already out of the can real thick? Maybe it's really cold out here and I want to heat up a can of, I don't know, SpaghettiOs, and it's dang near frozen when I put it in there. Well, then I've got to set it on and off multiple times because how cold my environment is, how cold the cup and the component is, how hot is that fire? Because by the time the top of it liquefies, this doesn't burn to a cinder at the bottom. You've got to on and off and keep stirring. On and off, keep stirring. Leave it in 15-20 seconds. Come off, give it a stir until you get the whole thing. If it is some sort of liquidy stuff, some sort of soup or something like that, I don't have to worry about that because the water itself does that thermoregulation. But this recipe, one of my favorites in the camp, especially on cold winter nights, is simply Spam or some other meat. It can be beef, it can be pork, it can be whatever you want. Add instant potatoes to it after I've browned it or heated it up. I've taken leftovers from meal A, you know, and I had a little bit of like a half a coffee cup left of roast beef or something like that. And that night I made potatoes and roast beef for camp taters. Quick and easy. But what it teaches you is thermoregulation. And to become a master with the Canteen Cup, you've got to learn how to regulate your fire and your heat sources and how to cook, not char, your supper. Hope you've enjoyed this, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.